The plane landed in Harbor City. Nestor's assistant stood expressionless in front of me, repeating his message word by word. So what? A whole year has passed, and you still can't forget me, or the child? You left so proudly back then, and now look at you, a stray dog no one wants, crawling back with your tail between your legs. You want to marry into wealth again? Fine. Kneel outside for 24 hours first. As for whether Luna forgives you, that'll depend on your own ability. Nestor's mocking tone was delivered by the assistant, with mechanical precision, without the slightest trace of emotion. It gave the whole thing a strangely absurd humor. I couldn't help but let out a quiet, mirthless laugh. The trench coat I wore was loose enough to cover the new wedding ring on my finger. This time, returning to Harbor City was not to beg for forgiveness, but to marry someone else. Chapter 1. The moment the assistant's words fell, the flashlights exploded in front of me, so bright they nearly blinded me. Microphones thrust forward, one after another. Miss Amanda, rumors say that you once stabbed Nestor and Miss Luna. Is that true? How did you escape legal punishment? Are you returning to Harbor City to rekindle your relationship with Nestor? Miss Amanda, could you tell us what you've been doing on the mainland? Why did you disappear without a trace? What's your opinion of Miss Luna now? Will you meet her? I tilted my head slightly. The collar of my coat blocked part of the flashing light. The new wedding ring beneath the fabric pressed coldly against my skin, bringing a sobering chill. I won't answer any questions, I said calmly. These old scandals and baseless speculations aren't worth another word. Taking advantage of the assistant's distraction as he dealt with the reporters, I lowered my posture, attempting to slip past him from the side. At the end of the passage outside the airport, a car that had been arranged beforehand was waiting for me. However, the assistant moved faster, once again blocking me with uncanny precision. Miss Amanda, the boss instructed that you must get in the car. I glanced toward the familiar black Maybach not far away. The windows were tinted dark, I couldn't see inside. After a brief pause, I stopped resisting and walked straight toward it. The assistant opened the car door for me. Inside, the air was filled with Nestor's usual cologne, cold and suffocating. But he wasn't there. I let out a quiet breath of relief. Taking out my phone, I sent a message to the driver who was originally supposed to pick me up. Something came up. I'll head to Nestor's mansion first to pick up some old belongings. Please wait for me. Chapter 2. The car drove along the familiar winding mountain road, passed through the vast golf course, and finally stopped in front of that familiar mansion. Its exterior was still grand, yet an air of silence hung over it. The assistant got out and opened the door for me. The scene I had imagined did not appear. There were no bodyguards in black uniforms forcing me to kneel. After all, to appease Luna's anger, Nestor had once ordered his men to press me down on my knees in the courtyard. Now, the mansion was eerily quiet. Even the servants seemed fewer in number, giving the place a desolate, abandoned feel. I pushed open the heavy doors of the living room. Nestor sat on the central sofa, relaxed, as if he had been waiting for a while. He glanced at his watch, then fixed his gaze on me. From the moment you stepped through that door, not a single minute of kneeling. What's wrong? Do you want to relive what it felt like to be thrown out? I met his gaze, my voice calm. I walked out on my own back then. I wasn't thrown out. Heh. He gave a cold laugh, still as stubborn as ever. You crazy woman. I ignored him, turned around, and went straight upstairs, to the room that had once been mine. When I left Harbor City years ago, it had been too sudden, too humiliating. Many important things had been left behind. Chapter 3. As soon as I opened the door, a suffocating wave of dust hit my face. I switched on the light. The furniture was covered with a thick layer of dust. Tiny motes floated in the air. I let out a quiet breath of relief. It seemed that no one had touched anything here. I walked to the old wardrobe against the wall and opened it. Dust fell in small clouds, reaching into the secret compartment at the back. I groped around. Empty. My heart sank halfway down. The box was gone. I have it. A childish voice sounded behind me. I turned. It was Lucas. In his arms was the very wooden box I had been searching for. This time, I didn't crouch down to meet his eyes. I stayed standing. He had to crane his neck to look up at me. His expression was almost indifferent. You want it? he asked. Will you give it to me? No, he answered quickly. This belongs to my mommy, Luna. I spoke evenly, stating the truth. Everyone knows this was mine. It used to belong to my grandma, and she gave it to my mommy. He replied logically. But you're not my mommy anymore. My mommy is Luna, so this belongs to her. Oh, I responded faintly, no longer looking at him, nor at the box. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, his voice rose in surprise and frustration, like a child whose plan had failed. Hey, you're just leaving? Don't you want it? It's your mom's keepsake. I didn't stop walking. I didn't answer. Yes, I didn't want it anymore. I remembered when he was 6, and I had begged for that jade Buddha in the same way. Back then, I knelt on the floor, looking up at him with pleading eyes. Lucas, can you give that to mommy? It's from grandma. It's the only thing mommy has left from her. He had asked. Is it important? Crying, I said. Yes, it's very important. Mommy only has this left. And he had looked at me, calmly, detached. Then, raising his hand, he had thrown the jade Buddha hard to the ground. The sharp sound of it shattering still sometimes echoes in my dreams. Now, his small voice came again, threatening from behind me. Take one more step and I'll smash everything inside this box. But I didn't stop, because I knew, if my mother were watching from heaven, she would never want to see me debase myself again for these cold, lifeless objects. Losing all dignity before my grandson, if it cannot be kept, better to let it go. Chapter 4. I walked down the stairs, one step at a time. In the living room, Nestor was still sitting where I had left him. I didn't look at him. I headed straight for the front door, reaching out to push open the heavy, carved wooden panels. Where are you going this late? His voice rose suddenly, inexplicably angry. Leaving. Lucas! He shouted sharply, but not at me. Give that cursed junk back to this crazy woman before she loses it again and starts slashing at us with a knife. Before his words were finished, a loud crash echoed from upstairs, the unmistakable sound of the box being smashed onto the floor. The sound struck my chest like a blunt blow. I froze for just a second. But my hands didn't stop pushing the door. It opened, and the cool night air poured in. Amanda! Nestor's furious voice chased after me. You think you can just come and go as you please? What do you take this house for, a hotel? You've been gone for a year, and now you're leaving again before even staying a full minute. Lucas corrected him calmly. A year, 8 months, and 21 days. A genius child, his sensitivity to numbers. He inherited from me. In truth, my purpose for coming back here was simple, to retrieve my mother's keepsake. If, at the entrance, there had indeed been guards forcing me to kneel, I would have turned around and walked away without hesitation. I would never have stepped foot inside this mansion, now that I was certain the item couldn't be recovered. There was no reason for me to stay even a second longer. But suddenly, hurried footsteps and a woman's voice sounded behind me, mixed with the servant's panicked pleas. Madam, slow down. Please be careful with your steps. Instinctively, I turned around. Luna was running toward me from the corridor on the side of the mansion. She looked different. The woman I remembered, pale, delicate, and pitifully soft, was gone. In her place stood a face buried under heavy makeup, thick foundation, bright red lipstick. Because of me. Back then, when I stabbed Nestor 7 times, nearly killing him, Luna had thrown herself between us and taken one blow. Unfortunately, that knife had slashed diagonally across her cheek. Half her face had been torn open. The sight had been horrifying, even with modern medical treatment. No surgery could completely erase the scar. That must be why she wore her makeup so thick now, to hide it. Chapter 5. Her eyes were filled with suspicion and scrutiny. Amanda, why did you come back to Harbor City? Are you still trying to cling to Nestor? Want to get back together with him? How pathetic can you be? I remained calm. I have no interest in being a homewrecker. Luna's expression shifted instantly. That sentence had clearly struck a nerve. I continued, my tone light. Don't worry. Nestor is a deeply devoted man, from beginning to end. He's only ever loved one person, you. I can testify to that. After all, No one knew better than I did how much Nestor adored Luna. Her expression softened slightly. A hint of pride even crossed her face. Of course, she said. After all, I'm his one true love. So what are you worried about then? If you're still afraid. The pathetic one here isn't me, it's you. With that, I turned and walked toward the car parked a short distance away. Don't you dare come back here again, she shouted behind me. Of course not, I replied without looking back. When I reached the car and began to open the door, a wrinkled, trembling hand suddenly reached out from the side and gripped it tightly. Madam, you've finally come back, a tearful voice said. I turned. It was Monica, the old maid who used to take care of me in this house. She looked much older now, her hair mostly white. She clutched my wrist tightly, tears streaming down her face. Madam, where have you been all this time? Please, take me with you. I'll work for you, serve you however you wish, to repay the kindness you showed me. If it weren't for the 2 million yuan you gave me, my daughter would have been dead by now. I tried to gently pull my hand free, my voice softening. Monica, I'm no longer the lady of this house. But she held onto the car door desperately, refusing to let go. I serve you. Madam, not this house. Please, take me with you. I looked at her tear-streaked face and hesitated for a moment. I'll be leaving Harbor City in a week, going to the mainland, and I won't be coming back. Are you sure you want to follow me? I'm sure, she said firmly. All right then, get ready. I'll come for you in a week. Chapter 6. My body sank into the mattress, a rare sense of comfort wrapping around me. But my phone screen kept lighting up, the notification chimes sounding again and again. It was the final wedding plan sent by the planning team, pages of files and images. I opened them and browsed carefully. Every detail had been decided according to my preferences. The plan was flawless, there was nothing to criticize. Just as I was reviewing the page confirming the floral arrangements, a new text arrived from an unfamiliar number. No greeting, no introduction, just a single PDF attachment. I hesitated for a moment, then downloaded it. It turned out to be a draft of a prenuptial agreement. I skimmed through it, and the content took me by surprise. The terms were extraordinarily generous to the woman. It promised vast real estate holdings, shares of stock, and even stated that in the event of divorce, the woman would receive a huge alimony and primary custody of the children. Yet at that moment, all I felt was a sense of strangeness and unease. Who sent this? The reply came almost instantly. Satisfied? Right then, I knew it was Nestor. Earlier that night, before bed, I had been scrolling through my phone. Harbor City's trending page was flooded with news about my return. I never cared much for the media, but this time, I watched with detached amusement, wondering what kind of news stories they would fabricate this round. And while scrolling, I noticed something surprising. Luna still hadn't married Nestor. When I left, their love had been so dramatic, so all-consuming. Everyone was certain that once I was gone, they'd marry immediately. Yet now, nearly 2 years had passed, and the wedding still hadn't happened. It wasn't so shocking. Really, Nestor's parents would never allow an ordinary woman like Luna into the family. And Nestor himself, he never had the courage to break free from his family's shadow. So what did he mean by sending me this agreement? Was it just like before, when he had me bake the perfect cake, only to serve it to Luna? When he gifted her the business project I built with my own hands as her birthday surprise? Now what? He wanted me to review Luna's prenuptial contract for him? I blocked and deleted the number without hesitation. Over the next 3 days, I was busy finalizing details with the planning team and fitting my altered wedding dress. On the 4th day, another message came from a different unknown number, with a new contract attached. One glance at the writing style, and I knew it was still Nestor. Persistent, as always, but this time, in the prenuptial agreements section for the bride's name, it clearly said, Amanda. Chapter 7. Our family will never allow Luna to marry into it. I can accept you again. Lucas is, after all, your own flesh and blood. We need a complete family, but you must never bully Luna again. A wave of nausea rose up my throat. I quickly typed my reply. You're disgusting. He must have been provoked. Amanda, are you still playing hard to get? You couldn't survive in the mainland, so now you're crawling back to Harbor City to beg for me. Everyone in China knows you're a knife-wielding lunatic. Who else would dare to want you but me? So what if you're beautiful? All these years, no one's married you, doesn't that say enough? I sneered. Then threw the phone straight into the trash can and switched to a new one. Because of that, I never saw the next message he sent 2 days later from a different number. Next weekend is young Master Alex's wedding. You'll come with me. I'll bring you to the ceremony. Let everyone see we've reconciled. After that, you can walk sideways through Harbor City. No one will dare touch you. What he didn't know was that the bride at that wedding was me. The day of the wedding, the sun was perfect, wearing my custom-made gown. I walked down the red carpet on my father's arm, step by steady step. Alex looked at me with calm, gentle eyes. The seats were full of guests. Then, suddenly, a voice thick with barely restrained rage broke through the music. Amanda, if you dare to marry, just try it. Chapter 8. That familiar, grating voice pierced through the wedding march, crashing into the hall like a violent wave. I turned toward the sound. Nestor was standing at the back of the guest seats, his face dark as iron. The table before him had already been overturned. Glasses and plates shattered across the floor. Gasps rippled through the guests, low and restrained. I had personally reviewed the guest list. There was absolutely no way he should have been here. As I began to grow suspicious, Alex's arm slipped firmly around my waist, pulling me slightly toward him. Don't worry, he said quietly. I'll handle this. Then he raised his hand and made a small gesture. The bodyguards moved swiftly, restraining Nestor just as he tried to rush forward. He struggled, shouting incoherently, but his voice was quickly muffled. In moments, he was forced out of the wedding hall, cleanly, efficiently. The MC, seasoned and professional, soothed the crowd with an easy, composed tone. The music resumed right on cue, graceful and solemn, as if the commotion had been nothing more than a brief gust of wind. There and gone, the entire incident stirred no real emotion within me. I took a deep breath, tightened my hold on Alex's arm, and turned back toward the priest. The ceremony continued without a hitch. Rings were exchanged, vows were spoken, the kiss sealed the moment. The wedding ended perfectly. The next day, at Harbor City International Airport, a private jet was already waiting. In truth, both Alex's and my business interests were now firmly rooted in the mainland. Years ago, the Alex family had moved their corporate focus from Harbor City to the mainland, following national development trends and government initiatives. But their family held one enduring tradition. Every generation, when marrying, must return to Harbor City to hold a wedding ceremony. It was their way of honoring the ancestors, who had once built their legacy here and who now rested beneath its soil, to let them share in the family's joy. Last year, after Alex and I were officially married in City A, he kept talking about holding the supplementary ceremony in Harbor City. I had been too busy expanding my business on the mainland, and only recently did I finally find time to come back and fulfill this wish with him. When the plane landed at City A airport, there were no more reporters swarming the exit, only the family's vehicles quietly waiting. But online, the whispers had never truly died down. People began to unearth, piece by piece, the sordid story of Nestor and me. The headlines were sensational, tinged with nostalgia and regret. The feature was titled Old Dreams of Harbor City. Chapter 9. In truth, Nestor and I were joined by an arranged marriage. Back then, our two families stood side by side, equal in power and influence. People thought our union was the perfect match. We were of similar age, background, and social standing. I hadn't expected much from the marriage at first. After all, everyone in Harbor City knew Nestor as a spoiled playboy, a man of indulgence and vice, but his family name shone too brightly for me to refuse. It wasn't until after I married him that I realized he wasn't the shallow, hedonistic man the rumors painted him to be. On the contrary, he showed remarkable talent and determination in business. Sharp-minded, driven, ambitious, and in love, at least at the beginning. He appeared devoted. There was only me. From every angle, he seemed the ideal husband, the perfect candidate for an alliance. even conservative and traditional by nature. By contrast, I was the one who seemed careless about family. I was a workaholic through and through, pouring all my energy into the joint projects between our two families. Often working late into the night. Many times, he would sit under the warm light of the living room, waiting quietly for me to come home, even when I became pregnant with Lucas. I didn't realize it until the bump grew too obvious to ignore. The child's arrival changed me. I had to shift part of my focus away from work, back toward home, and it was during those days of quiet, growing intimacy, that I fell deeper and deeper without noticing. Only later did I understand that the frantic way I used to work was not only out of passion, but perhaps also a kind of escape, an escape from the truth that I was slowly falling in love with the man who was, at least in name, my husband. I was afraid of love, afraid that love would make me weak, that it would strip away my sense of self. But Nestor was too good to me. He remembered every little thing I mentioned in passing, what I liked to eat, what I had once wanted to try, and had the kitchen make it for me in different ways. When I stayed up late reviewing documents, he would quietly drape a blanket over my shoulders and bring me a cup of warm milk. When morning sickness made me miserable, he'd put aside important meetings just to stay home with me. After Lucas was born, he learned to change diapers and feed him himself. His care was like water seeping through stone, gentle, patient, constant, and little by little, I, who had always guarded myself so tightly in love, lowered my defenses, fell further and further in. I even started to believe, naively, that perhaps we really were each other's only one, that this marriage born of interests and alliances might actually lead to love. Until the year Lucas turned 5, Luna came back, and all that was beautiful shattered, like fragile glass, splintering in an instant. Chapter 10. Luna had started as a nobody, just an unremarkable employee at the group's headquarters. No one knew exactly when the rumors began, but whispers about her and Nestor started spreading quietly through the company and even throughout Harbor City's social circles. At first, I didn't take them seriously. In my understanding back then, Nestor might have had his flaws, but betrayal wasn't one of them. There was something old-fashioned in his bones, a kind of moral sense of responsibility. Once he committed to a relationship, he saw it through. I even found the gossip a little ridiculous. Just another salacious fantasy from outsiders about the powerful heir of a wealthy family. One day, by accident, I came across a message from Luna on a spare phone Nestor had left at home. Her words were full of timid admiration and cautious devotion. And instead of anger, I only felt pity. Young girls always think that clinging to a powerful man can catapult them to the top, never realizing that true confidence must be earned, not borrowed. I didn't even bother questioning Nestor about it. Doing so would have felt beneath my dignity, until that day, when Luna knelt before me in the company lobby, her voice trembling with tears, as she poured out her story before a sea of onlookers. And in that humiliating public scene, I finally pieced together the full truth. She wasn't the intruder. She was the first. Luna was Nestor's first love, the woman he had truly loved in his youth. Their story was painfully cliché. The rich young master who fell for the pure, stubborn Cinderella. They loved passionately, sincerely, but in the end, couldn't overcome the gulf of class and the pressure of family. They were forced apart. I remember losing control that day, storming into Nestor's study, demanding answers. I asked him why he'd kept it from me, why he'd let me live like a fool, basking in an illusion of happiness built on lies. Nestor didn't defend himself. He simply looked tired and asked, "Does it matter, Amanda? Even if I'd told you before we married, would you have walked away from a union that was the best outcome for both families?" His words hit me like a bucket of ice water. No, even if I had known he still loved someone else. Under the circumstances then, I probably would have married him anyway. In our world of arranged marriages, each spouse having a past was nothing unusual. A love story that ended before it began, in a marriage built on alliances and appearances, seemed almost harmless. So in the end, the only one truly at fault was me. It was I who first broke the rules of our arranged marriage. It was I who, in the quiet repetition of everyday life, tragically handed over my heart. The deeper I fell, the more I lost control, the more I became someone I no longer recognized. Chapter 11. But I couldn't control myself. After learning the truth, every tender moment we'd once shared turned into a thorn. I became sensitive, suspicious, jealous. Every argument ended the same way, with Nestor sighing helplessly. Luna's emotions are unstable. If I push her away completely, she won't survive. Amanda, can't you try to understand? Even Lucas began to take Luna's side. I was strict with him, demanding discipline, structure, ambition, but Luna would secretly take him out of school for junk food. Let him play video games late into the night. In a child's simple world, the aunt who laughed and played was far more likable than the mother who always set rules. My husband, my son, their hearts both leaning toward another woman. That house became suffocating. The final straw came with my mother's sudden death. She died in a car accident. Before passing, she held my hand weakly and whispered, "Amanda, let it go. If you're unhappy, leave. All I want is for you to be happy." After handling her funeral, exhausted and hollow, I told Nestor I wanted a divorce. I thought it would bring relief for both of us, but he refused. His brows furrowed, his tone even carrying a trace of disbelief. "There's no need to go this far, Amanda. Just endure it a little longer and it'll pass." A divorce would hurt both families, and Lucas far too much. What finally detonated everything was Lucas right in front of me, deliberately smashing to pieces the only jade Buddha my mother had left me. He looked up at me, his small face wearing that same cold indifference as his father. "Mommy, Luna said it's a cursed thing." He said that we shouldn't keep it. In that instant, the last thread of restraint in my mind snapped completely. Nestor, 7 stabs. Luna, 1, holding the bloodstained knife. I looked at Nestor and asked, "Now, will you sign?" His hand trembled as he signed his name. After that, my father took me away from Harbor City that very night. We fled, took the first flight to the mainland, cutting all public ties with that place. From then on, the Harbor City socialite Amanda became the knife-wielding madwoman, vanished without a trace. Chapter 12. After leaving Harbor City, I threw myself entirely into my work on the mainland. Compared to Harbor City's market of just a few million people, this land, home to over 1 billion, held a level of consumer potential I had long overlooked. In recent years, more and more Hong Kong businessmen have been heading north. Many reach out to me, seeking advice, exploring cooperation, hoping to learn from my experience. That day, my secretary informed me that a company from Harbor City had scheduled a meeting. The firm wasn't large, but the background report revealed suspiciously strong financial power. I entered the conference room as usual. When I opened the door, the man standing by the floor-to-ceiling window turned around at the sound. I froze mid-step. It was Nestor. He looked tired, but his gaze was still sharp, cutting straight through the distance. Suppressing my brief surprise, I said calmly, "Sir, our company does not accept any business from your family or related entities." Nestor took 2 slow steps forward, his hands in his trouser pockets, posture dominant and confident. "Seems like you haven't read the news from Harbor City," he said. "I've already severed all ties with my family. This company is mine, personally. So, can we cooperate now?" He paused, tilting his head slightly. "Such explosive news, and you really haven't heard a word?" "I've seen it," I replied, tone flat. "But my stance hasn't changed. I refuse to work with anyone connected to your family, whether or not you still carry its name." Nestor laughed, cold, mocking. "Amanda, you've built such a big business. Aren't you afraid of damaging your reputation? Every Hong Kong investor that comes north still shows my family some courtesy. Aren't you afraid you'll cut off your own path acting like this?" I raised my head, my voice as steady as ever. "I built my company to this scale for the right to say no to anyone I don't want to work with. It feels good, actually. Sir, please leave." I turned to go, but his voice followed me from behind. "You don't want to know why I broke with my family?" I stopped in my tracks and turned slightly, brow raised. "Of course I know. Haven't the Harbor City tabloids made it clear?" the great heir, furious for love, breaking from his family just to marry Miss Luna. I nodded slightly, as if in understanding. Honestly, I admire your courage. Devotion is a virtue. I hope you keep it. I do love a good story where lovers reunite at last. To my surprise, Nestor laughed. Where did you even hear that nonsense? For her? Amanda, use your head. How could it ever be for her? It was for you. From the day you came back to Harbor City, I told my family. The old man refused to accept that I wanted to remarry you. So I walked away cleanly. The news only leaked now because they couldn't suppress it any longer. I froze, truly taken aback for the first time. But what followed wasn't warmth. It was confusion, disbelief, absurdity. For me? I repeated softly. What is that supposed to mean? I should be asking you that. Nestor's composure finally cracked. His voice rose, thick with restrained fury. Why did you marry Alex? No wonder I couldn't find a trace of you on the mainland. He was covering for you, wasn't he? You planned it all, didn't you? Found yourself a new protector before you left me. His accusations were senseless. I frowned and cut him off. Nestor, my remarriage has nothing to do with you. We've been divorced for a long time. Maybe not with me, but what about Lucas? His tone sharpened. Desperate. You're really that heartless? You'd just let him live with a stepmother? The air between us turned still, heavy. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, quietly, I realized how utterly exhausting it was. Nestor always lived inside his own logic, measuring everything, love, guilt, responsibility, by his own warped scale. And me, I had long stopped wanting to set foot in that swamp ever again. Chapter 13. I almost laughed from sheer disbelief. That signed divorce agreement, I remembered every clause clearly. Nestor, have you forgotten? I stated it plainly. In the divorce papers, I gave up everything. My only condition was that Lucas would have nothing more to do with me. I relinquished custody and waived all financial responsibility. It's there in black and white, with your signature. It wasn't that I had never loved Lucas. He was my own flesh and blood. But hearts, too, are made of flesh. They can grow cold. And they can ache. Nestor opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something. But I no longer wished to hear it. I turned around and walked away. That evening, the underground parking lot was quiet and empty. The familiar black Maybach was already parked in its usual spot. I opened the door and got in. Alex was sitting inside, head lowered, reviewing emails on his tablet. Hearing me, he set it down and, naturally, reached for my hand. His fingers were warm and dry as they laced through mine. I heard Nestor came to your company today? His tone was casual, as if talking about the weather. Harbor City and City A are thousands of miles apart. He continued lightly. He sure moves fast for a man so well informed. I let out a small laugh and leaned back against the seat. Everyone in the company knows my history with his family. Without an appointment or someone's permission, he couldn't even get past the gate. So tell me, who gave him that access? Alex pretended to think, his fingertip tapping lightly on the back of my hand. Yeah, who could have that much influence? I turned toward him and reached out, gently patting his cheek, teasing him like a mischievous pet. Must have been the company's little guard dog not watching the door properly. Let someone slip through by accident. He let out a soft woof. His gaze carried that calm, sly look of someone caught red-handed yet unashamed. Of course, I had already figured it out. Back at the Harbor City wedding, I had personally reviewed every guest's name. No room for error. The only person capable of getting Nestor inside, right at the last moment, was Alex. And the only one who could have let him into my company today was also Alex. But he hadn't done it out of malice. It was his way of showing me, letting me see with my own eyes that the man I once knew was still trapped in his same twisted logic, unchanged, unrepentant. He wanted me to witness the contrast, to see how clear, peaceful, and solid my life was now. It was an extreme gesture, perhaps. But he did it to help me, and himself, seal that door to the past shut forever, and find peace of mind. I looked at him, noticing the faint trace of nervousness in his eyes. as if waiting for reassurance. Something in me softened. Leaning over, I wrapped my arms around him, resting my chin on his shoulder. Alex. My voice was soft, but steady. You don't have to do this. I don't have a single shred of feeling left for him now, and always. I tapped lightly on his chest, over his heart. You're the only one here. He froze slightly, then held me tighter, his voice muffled against my neck. Really? I still get scared sometimes. After all, I lost you once because I was just a step too late. I'm not going anywhere. I whispered. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you. He was quiet for a few seconds, then murmured a soft mem, holding me even closer. Let's go home, he said. Sophia's been missing us. At the mention of our daughter's soft, sweet little face, a smile tugged at my lips. All right, I said gently. Let's go home. Chapter 14. When the car entered the courtyard, Monica came out to greet us. Speaking softly, Sophia woke up once just now, drank her milk, and went back to sleep. Under the gentle night light, Sophia lay in her cradle, sleeping soundly, her little cheeks pink and warm. Alex stood beside her, smiling tenderly. In the middle of the night, I was startled awake by Sophia's unusual crying. Touching her forehead, I felt the heat burning hot. The thermometer read 39.5 degrees Celsius. Our family doctor happened to be on leave in his hometown, and the newly hired one wouldn't start until tomorrow. Just one night's gap. That was all it took. Alex and I wrapped our daughter tightly in a blanket and drove straight to the best private hospital in the city. Emergency consultation, medication, an entire night of worry and exhaustion. By dawn, Sophia's fever finally subsided. Carrying our weary little girl, we left the ward, ready to go home. The family doctor should have arrived by now. The hospital lobby was quiet and empty. Morning light streamed through the glass facade. And then, a soft, frail boy's voice reached my ears. Clear and heartbreaking. Dad, if I get sick and have a fever, will Mom come to see me? A pause, then a familiar male voice. Yes, when your mom gave birth to you, she almost died. You're the one she loves most. Even if she doesn't want me, she'd never abandon you. I stopped in my tracks, eyes lifting instinctively. Not far away, in the waiting area, Lucas sat beside Nestor. His face was unnaturally flushed, clearly feverish. At that moment, he turned his head and met my gaze. He froze. Then, before he could stop himself, he called out, Mom. Nestor turned at the sound, and then he saw me, and Sophia, just recovered, was full of energy again. She waved her little hands and chirped clearly. Mommy. Mommy. Hug. Nestor and Lucas's gazes both locked onto her, their faces identical in shock and disbelief. Lucas spoke first, his voice trembling. Mom, who is she? I corrected him calmly. Lucas, I haven't been your mother for a long time. Please, from now on, don't interfere with my life. Nestor's temper flared instantly, ignited by those words. Amanda, how can you talk to a child like that? And who is this child? Alex stepped forward, half a pace, shielding me. What's wrong? This is my and Amanda's daughter. Is there a problem? Lucas swayed slightly, his small body trembling. He bit his lip, holding back tears, eyes red but stubborn as he looked at me. Mom, you're lying. You said I was the one you loved most. You said you'd never have another child. You said no one would ever take your love away from me. Chapter 15. I looked into Lucas's red, tear-filled eyes. The accusation and sorrow in them were so vivid. And yet, they no longer stirred anything in me. That was the past. Now, I don't love you anymore. I love my daughter, Sophia. Lucas froze for a second, then burst into uncontrollable sobs. Sophia, startled, began crying too. I left quickly. Behind me came Nestor's low, furious growl, and Lucas's increasingly heart-wrenching cries. But I didn't stop, not once. I thought that miserable encounter would be the end, knowing Nestor's pride. After being rejected so bluntly, and seeing that I had a new family, he should have finally let go. I underestimated his obsession. A few days later, on my usual route to work, a black sedan suddenly accelerated and swerved hard, blocking my car. Nestor stepped out, agitated, his voice hoarse as he shouted through the window. Lucas's fever won't break. It's turned into acute pneumonia. He's in the emergency room now. Amanda, he's your son. Are you really not going to see him? I lowered the car window, my tone utterly flat. Every day, thousands of children fall ill in this world. Am I supposed to visit them all? He stared at me, desperately searching for even the faintest flicker of emotion on my face. There was none. Then, he dropped to his knees, abruptly, without warning. Even I was startled. What do I have to do? His voice trembled. For you to come back? After a long silence, I finally heard my own voice. You already knew how this would end, so why humiliate yourself like this? His head snapped up, eyes wild and feverish. Suddenly, he tore open his shirt, revealing the jagged, disfigured scars across his chest and abdomen. Amanda, you owe me a life. I almost died by your hand. You owe me that debt. I looked quietly at the scars for a long moment, then said calmly, Fine, find a time, bring a knife. You can stab me 7 times. I won't resist. After that, we're even. Every debt between us wiped clean. Nestor froze, as if he hadn't understood. Then his shoulders began to shake violently. He laughed, a broken, hollow laugh. Ha ha ha. Amanda, your heart. It's so cruel. God, I'm pathetic. Just then, another car screeched to a halt beside us. Luna rushed out, seeing Nestor kneeling on the ground. She screamed and threw herself toward him, trying to pull him up. Nestor, get up. Why are you kneeling to her? You don't owe her anything. Have some dignity. But she couldn't move him. She suddenly turned, glaring at me, shouting hysterically, Amanda, you bitch. You're married, and you still haunt him. You deserve to die. At that moment, Monica, who had been following in the car behind mine, stormed forward and pointed at Luna's face, yelling, You've got a lot of nerve to talk. You shameless tramp. When Madam left, Sir kicked you out immediately. You were the one begging on your knees outside the mansion, bribing the servants to call you Mrs. Pa. Sir never even touched you. What kind of wife are you supposed to be? Disgraceful little whore. The murmurs around us grew louder. Several bystanders took out their phones and started recording. I no longer looked at Nestor kneeling on the ground, nor at Luna's screaming face, nor at the gathering crowd. I turned and got into my car, driving away. As expected, the tabloids in both Harbor City and City A were soon flooded with headlines about me, Nestor, and Luna. A few days later, news broke that Nestor had left City A with Lucas and returned to Harbor City. I finally exhaled, thinking life could return to normal. But only 2 weeks later, one afternoon, while I was in my study handling some documents, Monica burst through the door, panicked. Madam, it's terrible. Miss Sophia is gone. The nanny, Ah Fong, was found unconscious in the back garden, and this was on the ground. She opened her trembling hand. Inside lay a small Transformers badge, the kind little boys love to wear. I recognized it instantly. A long time ago, I had bought 2 identical ones and given one of them to Lucas. Chapter 16. I immediately stood up and hurried out as Monica's trembling voice came through the phone, giving me a broken report of what had happened. It turned out that earlier that afternoon, the nanny had taken Sophia to the private garden behind the estate to get some sun. Somehow, Lucas had slipped past security and snuck inside. Although the media had widely covered the scandals between Nestor and me, they had never published a clear photo of Lucas's face. The new nanny at home didn't recognize him. He lied, saying he was the child of a visiting guest who was bored and wanted to look around. Then, while the nanny was distracted, he suddenly grabbed Sophia and pressed a utility knife against her delicate neck. By the time I arrived at the garden, the situation was under control, but the air was thick with tension. Lucas was surrounded by several bodyguards at a distance, holding Sophia tightly in his arms. The blade of the knife was pressed against her throat. When he saw me, tears immediately welled up in his eyes. His gaze was filled with hatred and despair. "Mom," he screamed, "is this the only way you'll come to see me?" I forced myself to stay calm, keeping my voice steady. "Lucas, let your sister go first. If you have something to say, we can talk it through slowly. Mom will make time to be with you. I promise." "You're lying. You always lie." He shook his head violently, tightening his arms. Sophia whimpered, uncomfortable. "You don't want me anymore because of her. If she's gone, then I'll be your only child again. Then you'll come back to me." His wrist twitched, the tip of the blade inched closer. My heart stopped at that life and death moment. Sophia, who was squirming from discomfort, suddenly turned her head and saw Lucas's face right in front of hers. At 8 months old, she didn't understand danger at all. She grinned, her toothless mouth opening wide, and let out a bubbly giggle, blurting out a few broken syllables. "Brother." Lucas froze. The hand holding the knife stopped midair. Seeing that he didn't respond, Sophia tried again, smiling. "Brother, play." Clang. The utility knife fell to the grass. For a long moment, he just stood there, then began to cry. Tears streamed down his face. "Sister, I'm your brother. We share the same blood." The bodyguard seized the moment and gently pried Sophia from his arms. As he was being taken away, Lucas turned his head and shouted to the bewildered baby, "Sister, forget your brother. Don't remember me." When he passed by me, he lifted his tear-streaked face, sobbing, "Mom, I didn't mean the things I said before. I was just angry. I just wanted you to look at me. You've been gone for so long, you never thought of me once." I was mad. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. Holding it in his trembling palm, it was the jade Buddha he had once smashed in anger. Now it had been carefully repaired with gold foil, its cracks faintly glimmering under the light. "I kept it for you all this time. I'm sorry. I didn't take the jade Buddha. I didn't even glance at it." My eyes stayed locked on Sophia, who was being checked over in the nanny's arms. I walked straight toward my daughter. Behind me, his cries broke into desperate screams. "Mom, you have to come see me. You promised, you have to see me." From beginning to end, I never looked back. Chapter 17. Subsequent investigations confirmed that Nestor had nothing to do with the incident. When he found out, he was as shocked as everyone else. We immediately upgraded every aspect of our home's security system. After that, Nestor and Lucas seemed to vanish from the face of the earth. For the next 2 years, neither of them appeared in my life again. Later, I heard that Alex's business empire had expanded to Harbor City, while the Nestor family enterprise declined rapidly, collapsing under its own weight. Eventually, Nestor took his son abroad. As for Luna, he gave her a large sum of money to cut all ties. Rumor had it she, too, left the country and was never heard from again. On the day Nestor departed, he published a long post on social media. It was said to be a confession of his past mistakes, an apology filled with remorse and reflection. The tone was so sincere that it drew sympathy from many readers. I swiped my finger across the screen, closed the notification, and didn't open it. The evening sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, filling the living room with golden warmth. 2-year-old Sophia toddled over in her frilly dress, hugging a picture book in her tiny arms. She stopped in front of Alex, who was sitting on the sofa reviewing documents, and called out in her soft baby voice, "Daddy, read." Alex immediately set aside his papers, smiling gently as he lifted her onto his lap. He opened the book and began reading aloud, his voice low, patient, and warm. I walked over to them. Sophia saw me and reached out both arms. "Mommy, hug." I leaned down and wrapped them both in my arms, father and daughter together. Outside, the city lights began to glow. Inside, peace and warmth embraced the room. All the storms of the past had faded into silence. Now, there was only happiness. Epilogue. Actually, Alex and I had met long before, back when I still lived in Harbor City. It was a year before my marriage to Nestor, at a prestigious business forum hosted by Harbor City's top university. Alex was one of the keynote speakers, a young mainland entrepreneur invited to share his insights. During the networking session afterward, we spoke briefly. My impression of him then was one of calm restraint, so different from the sharp-edged arrogance of the city's wealthy heirs. I remember the last thing he said to me. "Miss Amanda, your perspective is remarkable. I hope we'll have the chance to speak again someday." Later, I learned that after that forum, he had actually approached my father through an intermediary, expressing a wish to get to know me better. But by then, the Nestor family's marriage proposal had already been placed on the table. Forceful, swift, and impossible to ignore. Among Harbor City's elite, alliances between powerful families operated like interlocking gears, precise, strategic, and merciless toward individual will. Whatever faint connection Alex and I might have had was quickly swallowed by the tidal wave of arranged politics and profit. Looking back now, perhaps it was that one step too late, that single missed moment, that cost him the chance to formally pursue me. At the time, his career was rooted in the mainland. To marry someone from Harbor City, he would have needed time to build relationships and alliances. But in Harbor City's high society, where marriages were transactions of power, there was no time for love to grow. After I married Nestor, all contact with Alex was lost. I only ever saw his name again in passing, in financial reports, where his group was said to be expanding steadily across the mainland, until the day I fled Harbor City, scarred, disgraced, branded as a madwoman. In those days of confusion and despair, when I was on the verge of giving up completely, he somehow found me. I still don't know how. His help was measured and professional, never overstepping, never condescending, but always protecting the fragile remnants of my dignity. Through the long years that followed, of rebuilding, recovering, and learning to breathe again, he was always there, steady, silent, reliable, like a mountain that would never move. He never once mentioned the past, never brought up the chance we missed. He simply offered his hand, at just the right time, in just the right way. It was he who made me believe that even after leaving that suffocating world behind, I could still live on my own terms, and live better. Love came quietly, growing from the days and nights of working side by side, and from his unspoken care that wrapped around me like light. The night of a project celebration banquet, he finally asked, in that same calm, restrained voice, "Amanda, for the rest of your life, do I have the right to walk with you?" And for once, there was no hesitation in my heart. It was a peace born not of passion, but of having weathered every storm, and finally finding home. And fortunately, this time, I chose right.